to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm going to see your show, Behind the Shoulder Pads, one night only at the Adelphi Theatre, October the 22nd. You're talking about your extraordinary life. Stage, screen, published author, 19
TV,
books, TV, most important.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's managed to straddle, what, 7, 8 decades in showbiz and still be at the top?
Yes. I was thinking about that the other day because somebody said, you know, with The Last of Good. There is a Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
She started at the same time as me.
Right.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
She started around the same time.
She's not working much, though.
It's true, she's not, but she's still out there being, you know, a major icon. And of course, people like Dick Van Dyke, who's just almost 100.
Yeah, he's incredible,
you know,
isn't he?
I'm a mere babe next to him.
You are. But you, and I was thinking about, you've written some extraordinary, wicked, waspish diaries, which of course you can because you've worked with so many people. Look at the names: Frank Sinatra, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, Dean Martin, Gregory Peck,
Richard Burton,
Paul Newman. The list goes on.
Gene Kelly,
and
my
Gene
favourite.
Kelly. Was he your favourite?
Yes.
Why?
Because I saw him in a movie when I was a little girl called For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland, and I just fell in love with him. It's such a cute movie. Well, they don't make movies like that anymore. And then I was lucky enough when I first went to Hollywood at age 20 to meet him and literally hang out with him and his friends. And then I put him in a movie with me that I produced. He played my husband in a movie called Sins. And he was wonderful. He was really wonderful.
The People's Channel.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight
and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country and, most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is,
who's going to pay it? Budget Day, all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Patrick Christys Tonight.
Get your act together and have a change of heart and see your old people and take care of them.
Just get his thinking head on a bit more and just start thinking about the pensioners.
He's got to get out of that Westminster bubble.
I am here at Stanley Indoor Bowl Centre and Community Hub, and some people around here are absolutely fuming.
Yes, of course they are, because, I mean, they've put nothing into this country at all, but they're living in hotels, now they're getting houses, yet I've worked all my life. I've got a little bit of savings, so that's held against me.
Well, he's right, isn't he? It's not fair. Just look at what happened today.
Well, the number for the whole of last year was 29,437. Just in the last few minutes, we have overtaken that number, 29,451.
You're paying for all of those people to have a warm bed and board this winter. Meanwhile, Starmer couldn't tell you what a woman is.
No,
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps.
And now we can't even tell you what a working person is.
OK, so for someone who works but gets their income from assets as well, such as shares of property, are they a working person?
Well, they wouldn't come within my definition.
We're going to get stuck into that. And a massive thank you to everybody who has donated to my fundraiser. It's justgiving.com/page/save our seniors. You have smashed our target of £260,000 for Friends of the Elderly. All that remains is for me to do my freezing cold swim in Stickle Tarn in the Lake District tomorrow, which I am not looking forward to. Well, it's over to Ben Leo, who's going to be taking care of business in the studio this evening. Who's on your panel, Ben?
Patrick, goodness me, you've been on the go all day. Get the man a cup of tea, somebody. Tonight on the panel, Communications Officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim, the political commentator, Alex Armstrong, and the CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns. A huge show coming up and plenty to come from Patrick Oop North. But first, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock. A look at the top stories tonight. And one of the world's most prolific online child abusers has been sentenced to life today in prison with a minimum of 20 years. Alexander McCartney admitted 185 charges involving 70 children, including the manslaughter of a 12-year-old girl from the United States, Kamaran Thomas, who took her own life rather than obey McCartney's demand to involve her younger sister in the abuse. Police believe, though, that the total number of children he abused is around 3,500. Catherine Kieran's from Northern Ireland's Serious Crime Unit says thousands of children and their families have now been left dealing with the traumatic aftermath.
Their courage stands in stark contrast to McCartney's cowardice in targeting vulnerable young girls. The bravery of the young victims has been an inspiration to everyone who worked on this case. His conviction sends a message to other abusers. Your actions have dire consequences, and there is nowhere to hide from the justice system.
The number of migrants crossing the English Channel into the UK so far this year has already surpassed the entire total for 2023. Today's milestone, confirmed by GBNews, was reached when the Border Force vessel Typhoon arrived in Dover carrying 55 migrants, bringing this year's total to now 29,451. That is just over the total of 29,437 recorded last year. Over 1,200 migrants have arrived this week alone, with calmer weather allowing for that sharp rise in crossings. Officials, though, are now predicting up to 40,000 migrants could cross by the end of the year, despite Labour's pledge to tackle the crisis and smash the gangs. A Home Office spokesperson has also called the latest migrant deaths this week a devastating tragedy. Breaking news from the United States this hour, and the former long-time CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch has pled not guilty to charges of running an international sex and trafficking network involving young male models. 80-year-old Mike Jeffries, along with his partner Matthew Smith, were arrested following an FBI investigation this week, sparked by claims the couple lured at least 15 young men to sex parties around the world, where Jeffries and Smith sexually abused them. Prosecutors allege the victims, who were as young as 19, were often drugged, subjected to painful genital injections and forced to perform sex acts. Mr. Jeffries served as the CEO of the company from 1992 until 2014 and is next set to appear in court on the 12th of December. And Tommy Robinson will miss his own planned march for thousands of protesters in London tomorrow after being arrested by Kent police. The 41-year-old, known as Stephen Yaxley Lennon, is accused of contempt of court relating to a film he aired at a previous protest in the capital, making libelous claims against a Syrian refugee. It comes as he's also facing additional charges under the Terrorism Act for allegedly failing to provide his mobile phone PIN to police. Well, as supporters are preparing for that demonstration tomorrow, significant police presence is planned. The Met Police say that is to ensure safety amid expected counter-protests. And back to the United States now, where Chinese hackers have reportedly tried to break into mobile phones used by Donald Trump and his vice presidential running mate J.D. Vance as part of a sophisticated infiltration of the Verizon network. The Trump campaign was alerted earlier this week, with officials warning that sensitive data, including contact information, may have been accessed. The breach marks the latest attempt by foreign actors to interfere in the US elections following recent Justice Department charges against Iranian hackers targeting Trump's campaign. And finally, to some brighter and perhaps tastier news for some. In a daring cheese heist in London, Neal's Yard Dairy says over 22 tonnes of cheddar have been stolen in an alleged scam. The Southwark-based manufacturer says it delivered 950 wheels of the cheese to fraudsters posing as a wholesale distributor for a major French retailer. Despite the loss, though, Neal's Yard covered the cost to 3 farms, sparing producers the financial hit. Police are now investigating, though no arrests have been made so far. But Neal's Yard is asking cheesemongers around the world to watch out for stolen clothboard cheddars, which may be sold without identifying tags. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I know exactly where the cheese is hiding. It's behind Ben Leo's sofa.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Put the cheese away, put the cheese... Sorry, the cheese is there. Sam, don't grasp me up like that. Welcome, everybody. Big show coming up. We're going to be heading to Patrick up north very, very shortly. Actually, let's go now. Patrick, in County Durham. Talking about working people. Patrick, you are the hardest working man in Britain today, I am sure. What's going on?
Look, thank you very, very much for holding the fort for me, Ben, back at base. But we've got some important work to do here. So all day today, I've been pounding the pavements here in Stanley in County Durham, talking to people in places like Keir Hardie Way, Lenin Terrace, you know, traditional, you would imagine, like Labour heartlands, in a sense. I wanted to find out what they made of the winter fuel payment being cut, because I think there is a burning injustice going on in society at the moment. So later on in the show, we're going to be hearing from people who were kind enough to let me into their own homes to tell me what their real-life situation is. But as you can see, I am at the wonderful Stanley Indoor Bowl Centre and Community Hub here. Absolutely fantastic setting. We have got a little bit of an audience for us as well. Might introduce them to you later on. But right now, I'm surrounded by some lovely people. And I'm going to start with Gail, who has ducked out of trying to teach me bowls later. More of that at 9:30, by the way. I have said that I am unteachable. But anyway. Now, Gail, you feel like pensioners are under attack a bit, don't you, I think?
I do, very much so. And I really believe that if the pensioners knew when they voted what was going to happen, I don't think Labour would have got in. It seems to me that if you work all your life and you work hard and you save and everything else, it doesn't pay you to do that anymore. You get nothing, you get everything taken off you. If they'd said they were going to half it, that wouldn't have been quite so bad. But it's a big blow to people to suddenly have £200, £300 taken off them in one fell swoop. When, you know, they just seem to be hitting on people who really can't fight back. They're too old to fight back, and I just think it's very, very unfair.
Well, I think that's the word. It's unfair. Now, I'm going to bring you in, Brian, because what Gail said there is, yeah, people might not have voted for this, and I think that's true. And look, I think we can all agree that there are some people that don't need the winter fuel payment, but there are a lot of people who do. Do you think more should be done to help needy pensioners?
Well, as an octogenarian, I've been through a lot in life. I started life in poverty with my own family, and we've always struggled. But thankfully, we've made our way through, perseverance, and we're reasonably comfortable. But there are many, many people out there, particularly in the northeast and other deprived areas, who are very needy of help from the government. This winter fuel allowance is one of them, and there are other benefits and allowances which should be made more readily available to those people. One of the problems is finding the levels at which the payments should be and the levels at which they are entitled to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are many, if I say hangers-on, people who've had it and wasted it and now expect the government to look after them. It knocks a lot of people.
Yeah.
But generally, those who need it should have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, speaking as somebody who's 32 years old, that I owe, and my generation, the generation that's younger than me, owes everything to the people who've come before. And I think it's a real disgrace that in this country we don't seem to value people who are maybe a bit later in life, who have put into the system all their lives, who have helped pay for the system that I have been able to enjoy. And that is something that I feel very, very deeply. But Aidan, I just want to bring you in here because you're the vice chairman of this wonderful establishment. Yep. So thank you very much for having us, by the way. And you made a great point to me before. I mean, this is a bit of a disgrace, the winter fuel payment cut, and it could have knock-on effects, couldn't it?
Yeah, because basically people who come and play here are of an older age, and they maybe find themselves where they have to, choose between putting the heating on and playing bowls, which obviously we don't want. It's bad for our business. It's bad for everyone. I'm dead against it. I'm close to pension age myself. I've still got a few years left, but obviously people save for pensions. They don't expect to be penalised later on in life because they've saved. People need to be treated fairly, and people need to be treated honestly. What you were saying earlier about possibly raising the cap, putting it at a level which is like a fair level, I would agree more with that.
Yeah.
But,
The funny thing is, as well, I was talking to someone else earlier on, and that I believe they used to get coal from right underneath where we're sitting now. Yeah. And when you think about that versus what the energy bills for this place are now, every single month, is ridiculous. Yeah. And that is just a visible sign, I think, of where we are, and potentially how ideology has allowed people to slip through the cracks. I mean, you think you could be drilling for coal right below our feet here. Instead, somewhere like this is now having to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a month just to keep the lights on. And a lot of the people who use it are going to really, really struggle this winter. It just seems like something has gone quite badly wrong. But can I just say a massive thank you for kickstarting the show with me tonight. And I know that a little bit later on I'm going to be trying and failing to play some bowls. So I know I can see a bit of laughter out there now. I don't know who's going to volunteer how to teach me, but for now, Ben, it's back to you in the studio. But we're going to be having a lot more to say here.
Patrick, thank you. Great stuff. And look, I have to say, sterling work, because we see the headlines, we always see the numbers thrown around and the statistics, but actually you're giving us a glimpse into the human stories behind this policy. And I have to say, it's heartwarming. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Reem, let's do it.
That's the surname.
Let's do it like a football score. We've got Armstrong.
Well, that's good, because there is two Alexes here on the panel.
It's true.
This might work quite well.
All right, we've set the tone now. Reem, you are opposed, in favour, of this policy, aren't you? You think this is a good thing?
I am, yes. Now, I think that what Patrick is doing is absolutely brilliant, and I really, really do respect it. However, when we're thinking about public spending and we're thinking about the way in which we distribute different types of benefits, which is what it is a benefit. Pensioners are some of the most wealthy people in the country. 25% of them are millionaires. We should not be giving them benefits.
Hang on. Right, I'm going to stop you right there. What do you mean 25% of millionaires? Do you mean property, equity in their property?
Yeah, a lot of that is property, right?
Right, but they're not cash rich, are they? They're not sort of swanning off to Saint-Tropez and Marbella and, filling their boots with expensive cocktails.
You're absolutely right, but I don't think that taxpayer money that is being paid for by hard-working people in this country today should be going to millionaires. I think that's pretty communist, if you ask me. And I think when we're thinking about this from a wider perspective, we already spend more than double the entire budget of the Ministry of Defence on pensions alone. That's ridiculous, it's unsustainable, and the winter fuel payments are just an addition to that.
Reem, I dare you to look like that poor chap in the eye that Patrick is with up north and tell him you're taking his winter fuel allowance. Alex Armstrong, your thoughts?
Oh, this is absolutely outrageous. I'm sorry. Reem is absolutely outrageous tonight. Listen, our OAPs and our elderly people in our country have worked hard and have contributed to the country that we have today. They have contributed, in some cases, millions of tax pounds to our coffers. And now, when they need us the most, we're hitting them hard when they really do need us, and they are very hard up. We do have an easy solution to this, though, Ben. We could actually start drilling for oil and gas again and make ourselves energy independent and not have to bail people out with taxes because our energy bills are too high. So there is good capital sort of solutions to this, which I'd love to hear more from you on
no,
that.
Alex,
I know you agree with me on that. I know.
Look, drill, baby, drill. I'm totally pro that. And if we increase the supply of energy, prices will come down. That's economics 101. However, we're talking about the current system, which is winter fuel payments, and we know that 25% of pensioners are millionaires. I'm sorry, but taxpayer money,
listen, come on, Reem, you have to dispute that millionaire status thing. I get what you're saying, but they're not all selling up their. Well, they're going to be forced to sell their houses soon for a massive loss.
Why should the government be paying for them?
Alex Cairns, your thoughts?
Actually, the interesting thing is, when you speak to lots of pensioners, right, a lot of them actually have accepted that it was meant to be a temporary thing, right? You know, if we take a step back, it was brought in as a temporary measure. Everyone knows that the state pension is going up. I think everyone is making this very political, but a lot of people are not. I don't like this dramatic thing where if they don't get the £300, suddenly lots of people are going to die. I think it's very it's not true, and it's very...
No, but by Labour's own standards.
It
by
isn't.
Labour's own standards, Alex, come on. Labour's own research showed that people would die this winter.
But that's ridiculous. The idea that them not getting £300 means that they're suddenly just going to drop dead. There's a whole load of factors, and it's not fair for some pensioners. Look, the pension credit, some of the poorest pensioners are still going to get the winter fuel payments, right?
They're not getting winter fuel payments. What they are getting is an increase in the pension uplift. So what they are getting is pension credit. So they're trying to increase the number of people that are on pension credit, which, by the way, ironically, is probably going to cost the Treasury even more money. So the current system is where everybody, no matter how wealthy you are, gets winter fuel payments.
Reem, the issue is that this is saving the government, £1 to £1.5 billion at a time when they're spending £22 billion on carbon capture schemes that even eco-zealots and sceptics alike say is absolute rubbish. They're sending £11 billion in climate aid abroad. They're spending £14 billion in public sector pay rises for a paltry, in the grand scheme of things, £1.5 billion.
I agree, but two wrongs don't make it right. Two wrongs don't make it right. It's not like going after pensioners, Ben. It's effectively people that are already wealthy should not be getting benefits from tax. By the way, I would get rid of the state pension altogether. I think we should leave...
Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness.
No,
come on, Reem, listen, look. We need to look after people. If there people will die this winter, and they will. People will. People will die this winter. There are people who are actually not going to get this credit. No, they will. No, they will. When people are going to die, it's imperative the state looks after them in that moment. Okay. We can't just let people freeze to death in their homes.
They can afford it themselves.
Some of them can't, though, Reem. That's the problem. We're going to hear from them tonight.
Okay. Pat's going to...
But they're not.
When you talk over each other, people at home, they
apologies to the audience at home.
To be frank, it does their head. Thank you very much. Reem, Armstrong, Cairns, thank you very much. Great start. We'll get back to that very shortly. Still to come, though, we'll go back to Patrick in Stanley, where he'll be taking on the locals at the Bowls Club. Cannot wait to see that. But first...
OK, so for someone who works but gets their income from assets as well, such as shares of property, are they a working person?
Well, they wouldn't come within my definition.
Yes, Sir Keir Starmer sparked outrage after claiming that people with assets such as shares or property aren't working people. Former Tory Chancellor Lord Lamont has accused the PM of stoking a class war. Do you agree? Are landlords and investors working people? Going head-to-head on that is the Director of Partnerships at Total Landlord Insurance, Paul Champlina, and Dr Lisa McKenzie. They'll clash on that next. Don't go anywhere. Back in a tick.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And for the next nearly 400 years, had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Time now for our head-to-head. Now, Sir Keir Starmer's been accused by a former Conservative Chancellor of stoking a class war after he said that working people don't include those making money from renting property or owning stocks and shares. Speaking to Sky News yesterday, the Prime Minister sparked fury with this comment.
OK, so for someone who works but gets their income from assets as well, such as shares of property, are they a working person?
Well, they wouldn't come within my definition.
So their taxes could go up?
Yeah, I mean, you can probably give me any number of examples.
All a bit of a word salad, that, wasn't it? Sir Keir Starmer and his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, have repeatedly said they wouldn't raise taxes for working people. But now it appears that landlords or those who have assets could face a pretty nasty surprise in next week's budget. And speaking to GB News political editor Christopher Hope earlier today, former Tory Chancellor Lord Lamont had some harsh words for the PM.
I must say I dislike this phrase working people, not just because of its ambiguity, but I think it's deliberately designed to imply working class, which I think is an out-of-date idea, and it's appealing to old-fashioned labour mythology. And I think it's a very unpleasant term to talk about working people. Why is a pensioner not a working person? They've worked all their life. It's ridiculous.
All right, so what do you think? Are landlords and investors working people? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. I'm now joined by Director of Partnerships at Total Landlord Insurance, who appeared in Channel 5's Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlords, great show, Paul Champlina, and academic Dr Lisa McKenzie. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining me. Dr Lisa McKenzie, let's start with you. You call yourself an anarchist, correct? But you think landlords... For some reason, you're siding with Labour on this. You think landlords are parasitic?
I'm not siding with Labour, but what I am saying is, on this occasion, Keir Starmer is actually trying to do something that is right. He's got it wrong because he should have said working class people. Do I think that landlords are parasitic? I think that some are, definitely. We're definitely in a housing crisis, and some landlords are profiteering from that housing crisis. Rents are going up incredibly every year, and they don't actually represent working class people's incomes. So I think there's a lot of profiteering going on. And I think on this occasion, although I think he's messed it up by not saying working class people, I think Keir Starmer's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure what he means. I mean, I can't believe they're heading into a budget where they're still not... they haven't got any vision on what working people, what a working person is. You know, they're just going round and round in circles, talking about the mind's eye and so on and so on. Paul, are you a slum landlord? Are you a decent landlord?
I'm a good landlord. I'm proud to be a good landlord. I mean, look, there's 2.74 million landlords in England and Wales. Can you be a working class landlord? Yes, you can. Are landlords working people? Yes, they are. It's a 24/7 business. I mean, 85% of landlords out there have between 1 and 3 properties, and they are the mass. As a landlord, you know, when you put a tenant in a property, most landlords care. Yes, there are landlords at property, without a doubt. But as I said, you've got 2.74 million landlords. I mean, 30% of landlords out there work full-time, 10% work part-time. You've got 28% that are self-employed. And actually, you know, landlords are being taxed a hell of a lot, and they're going to be taxed more, it looks like, in the budget. And of course, obviously, mortgage costs have gone up. And I totally agree with Lisa that, you know, rents have gone through the roof. But we have a housing crisis, and you can't keep bashing landlords, because if you do, they end up selling. And who loses out? The tenants, because they're going to be asked to leave a property.
Yeah, Lisa, who do you think is going to provide this housing for the flood of migrants we've got, the population explosion? I mean, where's that going to come from? What's about that?
Do you know what? I'm not that bothered about that part of this issue, to be honest. I am bothered that I think what Keir Starmer's done with this is completely fudged it. He needed to say working class people. That's what he needed to say. But he completely, because he doesn't understand class. He doesn't understand that we do still live in a class system, and there are people who are extremely privileged, who has been given and handed down properties and assets, you know, and have not earned those things. They've been handed them down. So,
well, hang on, Lisa. Can I interject? Sorry to interrupt you. What do you mean they haven't earned them? I mean, maybe their parents grafted for decades and decades to hand something down to their children, and indeed, when they did die, they inherited a property. What's wrong with that?
Well, you've just said it. They didn't work for that. I mean,
But their families did.
Yeah, but you know, my dad worked down the mines, and now he's got his winter fuel payment taken off him. So what I'm saying is, when you've got a class system, you do get unearned and undeserved wealth that gets passed down. Equally, when you've got a class system, you get unearned and undeserved disadvantages that get passed down. So what Keir Starmer has done, he needed to talk about the class war, but he's fudged it, because it's actually middle-class people who are voting for him.
But Lisa, with respect, saying that things are unearned and, you know, people are getting situations and circumstances that they didn't ask for, to me, that doesn't sound like something from an anarchist. It sounds, with respect, like you're a communist.
Yeah, no, I'm not a communist, but I do understand that Britain has got a brilliant class system. It's got a great class system. It works. And there is unearned and undeserved advantages that are passed down. And equally, there are unearned and undeserved disadvantages. And that's how the class system works.
Paul, you're rolling your eyes. Why?
So I could be working class. I could be working hard all my life. I could save some money up for a deposit for a property, a secondary property, because I'm not getting great money or return for my pension. And I could be working class, but a working people being a landlord. You know, as I said, there's so many landlords out there. Not all landlords drive Bentleys and Rolls Royces. Let's be very, very clear. You know, I've been working with landlords for 34 years. Most landlords care about their tenants. They want their tenants to live in a decent home so they can stay in the property as long as possible. What has hampered landlords is obviously the regulation that's coming in. And of course, the big problem with all of this, we have a mass housing shortage and a social housing crisis, a temporary housing accommodation crisis, and the private rental sector ends up picking it up. And as I've said on many, many media platforms, is if you keep on poking the bear, Ben, eventually the landlord and the anti-landlord rhetoric gets to a landlord where they think, you know what, why should I be a landlord? I mean, I did a talk last week in Briton. I asked the crowd of 200 landlords, how many of you actually say that you are a landlord? About 10 hands went up out of 200 landlords. They feel ashamed of the word landlord. Maybe the word landlord is out of date and they should be called a housing provider.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have a big crisis here. And of course, before September next year, We're having the renters' rights bill that are going to come in, and some of it is really, really workable. And it's a worry for the sector.
And landlords have already lost tax relief over recent years. It's pretty much been diluted down to zero. And also, a lot of the time, if they're not inherited from passing parents, even when it comes to stocks and shares, you're buying these investments using money that's already been taxed most of the time. And then the government comes along and says, thanks for taking the risk on that investment. I'm going to swipe, if it's to be seen next week in the budget, I'm going to swipe 39% of that. I mean, I would argue that's daylight robbery. It should be much lower. And there was a report today from the Adam Smith Institute saying that if you cut the rate of capital gains tax, it would promote very heavily GDP. I think it happened in, was it Ireland, some decades back? They cut capital gains tax, they slashed it, and GDP rocketed as a result. Paul Champlina, thank you, and the academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, thank you for joining me this evening. What do you think about that? gbnews.com/your say. Aspiration nation, or as Lisa said, should we try and drag everyone down to the same level because, fairness. I mean, it sounds like communism to me. Coming up on the show, GB News can exclusively reveal that the number of Channel migrants arriving in the UK this year has, unfortunately, overtaken the total for the whole of 2023. So has Sir Keir Starmer's government made the small boats crisis even worse? Reform UK's immigration and justice spokeswoman Anne Widdecombe joins me very soon. She's also got the inside track on the latest Reform UK defections. But first, we'll be going straight back to Patrick in Stanley.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, 3 areas of weather tomorrow. A fine day for many, but there will be some wet weather in the far northwest and quite grey and a little damp in the far southeast. The bigger picture shows an area of low pressure down to the southwest. That is just edging away. This weather front is moving north, bringing some damp conditions through this evening across central and southern Scotland, clearing away from northeast England. At the same time, overnight, some patchy rain just trickling up from France towards Kent and maybe even into the London area. But most places dry and clear through the nights. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but generally pretty mild for the end of October. Into tomorrow, and as I said, for many of us, it's a fine day, but there will be a weather front bringing cloud and rain into the Outer Hebrides and across the Northern Isles, and that will only slowly track its way southwards across parts of the mainland down towards the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's a dry start to the weekend. Could be some fog around, and further south, maybe a little misty in places. Certainly a grey start for East Anglia in the southeast. A little bit of rain and drizzle likely here. Staying quite damp, actually, across parts of the southeast for most of the day. Quite windy in the far southwest, but not as windy as today. But for the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall, still a noticeable breeze. Could be the odd shower, but much of southwest England, Wales, northern England, eastern Scotland, dry and fine. That weather front will bring cloud and rain to the west coast of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But in the sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, all that wet weather's pretty much out of the way. It makes for a cold start to Sunday, but generally a good-looking day across the bulk of England and Wales. Plenty of sunshine. Scotland, Northern Ireland, mostly starting dry, but more rain coming in from the northwest as the day goes on. Temperature's not as high, and after that chilly start, we'll probably get up to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets at my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dame.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Let's go straight back to Patrick Christys, who's up north in Stanley, County Durham, where he's at a bowl centre, I think. Patrick, what's going on?
Absolutely. They have let me on the hallowed turf here at the Stanley Indoor Bowl Centre. You can tell by the grandstand there that they have some major tournaments here. It's the closest that you'll get to a world-class surface. And we do have a world-class audience with us tonight, don't we, as well? There they are. Look at them. Thank you very much, everybody, for turning out for us tonight here at GB News. So I'm joined by Gordon and George, who they're going to talk to me about how on earth I can play bowls. But before we do that, chaps, I would like to have a quick chat with you about the reason why we're here, which is that I wanted to talk to people about the loss of the winter fuel payment. Now, I know that you feel particularly strongly about it.
Certainly do.
Yeah, what's bad about it for you in terms of the loss of it, do you think?
Well, in this government, this Labour government that's come in, I'm disgusted at them, basically. And one of the first policy announcements was we're going to cut the winter fuel allowance to pensioners. Yeah, OK, energy prices have gone down a bit, but I think they could have mitigated this a little bit and give us a little bit less. There's a lot of people going to be impacted by this throughout the time. And I just think that because of pension credits, etc., that you've got to qualify for it. It's totally wrong. I think the amount, £1.5 billion, it sounds a lot that they're saving, but in the total tax take of this country, it's £827 billion in 2023. That represents about 0.17% of the total tax take. Now, if my accountant turned around to me at home and told me that I had to save 0.17% of my total amount of money that I spent in a year, I would just think,
You'd make it work, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would make it work.
You'd make it work.
I'd make it work easily.
Because Labour say, don't they? Look, it's the £22 billion black hole that we've got. So we've got to fill it. We've got to do this. Otherwise, you know, the economy would crumble. Yourself, so I was chatting to you, and I think you're mostly concerned for people who are unwell and stuck in their own homes this winter, aren't you?
That's the ones I'm concerned for. Like myself, we can manage, but without it. But there's a lot of people who I know. I was an ambulance man and I used to pick people up from home and all that, and they were really struggling to get out, so they need the heating.
They need it.
And that's where the fuel should be.
And if you're trapped at home all day and you've got to keep the heating on, you've got to put an oxygen tank on, you've got to do whatever, then the bills rack up and up and up, and, and it's a problem. Now, we have had some of the best bowls players that this country's ever produced grace this hallowed turf, and now you've got me. OK, so I'm reliably informed that you're both going to just try to teach me how to... There's the jack down there. It's called the jack, isn't it? There you go. I'm doing my research. The jack is down there. I don't know if we can see it. So I'm going to try and see how close I can get to that. But chaps, I need you to give me a hand first. So come on, some top tips. Who's going to advise me first? Do you think you look like the man? So go on.
Do you want to watch how I try?
OK.
That's right. I like to go at an angle.
OK, go at an angle.
And this is number 4 ring. 3, 2. I aim for number 2 ring.
OK.
Because these are very swinging roads.
All right.
Pools. So do you want us to pool one?
I'd like you to, and let's see how we get on. I'm sure it'll be fantastic. No pressure. You see, what I didn't say on camera earlier was that I had a go in the break, and it didn't look anything like this. I don't think I'm going to be able to get anywhere near that. That's a pretty good start, isn't it? I think fantastic. Well done. All right. OK. Right, now it's your turn. No, now it's your turn, and then I'm going to have a go. So I've watched the master at work here.
Yeah.
Go on. I'm looking, I'm observing. There we go. So, OK, so how do I make sure that it curves in the direction that I want it to curve in, then? Here we go.
When you're pulling for your backhand,
yeah,
that disc must be inside.
That'll be on the inside. Great effort, by the way.
When you pull for the forehand, it has to be that.
So I want it to curve that way?
But you would be going for the backhand. I watched you before.
Yeah, that was terrible.
That's the way you must have it.
OK, all right. What do we think? Do we think I'm going to get anywhere near this? Yeah. Not a chance, not a chance. OK, all right then.
Don't jump up when you're bored.
OK, all right, here we go. Well, let's give it a go, shall we?
Stand on the mat.
Stand on the mat. There we are. Stand on the mat.
Balls up. You've just gone that bit.
OK. No, not quite. There you go. Well, anyway. Oh, well. All right, look, I'm never going to be a bowls master anytime soon, but can I just say a massive thank you? We're hearing from real people here on GB News. This is really what the channel's supposed to do. They're up in arms about the loss of the winter fuel payment, and I think rightly so. We will not stand by and let this injustice go unnoticed. Back to you, Ben.
Patrick, great stuff. You're a very talented man, I must say, but I think that ball at least ended up in Scotland or somewhere north of the border. So keep practising, my friend.
It did.
Right, let's get the thoughts now of the communications chief at the IEA, Reem Ibrahim, political commentator Alex Armstrong and the CEO of Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns. Reem, I just need to read you a very quick comment from our viewers because I'll be frank, you have riled up a lot of them tonight with your comments about pensioners.
I expected so.
Christina, one of our members, good evening, Christina, thank you for watching. You say, Ben, please let Reem know that until she's worked hard all her life, I just hope that she has enough money, pension and savings to keep her in luxury without a state pension or benefits of any kind. I think she'll be surprised how hard it is.
Look, I understand why people are upset. It's not a very popular opinion. What I will say is that those that can't afford their winter fuel payments, that can't afford their energy bills, will be in receipt of the winter fuel payments. So it's just that everybody shouldn't be getting it. I don't think that Rishi Sunak, for example, should be getting the winter fuel payments when he's a pensioner. Do we all agree? I don't think he should be getting taxpayer money.
OK, Alex?
Well, look, I mean, the reality is that isn't the case. And there are many pensioners who are going to suffer as a result of this policy, who haven't got the money that Reem thinks they do. They're not all millionaires, unfortunately. Which is what really gets my goat and what will get the goat of people up in the constituency that Patrick's in, is that many of those people voted for Labour. They never put the winter fuel payment cut on their manifesto, from what I remember. And they've duped the electorate. We had the current Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Dame Joan, who said that they would never cut the winter fuel payments. And Keir Starmer put out leaflets saying he would never betray pensioners. Well, if anything, this is the biggest betrayal since Brexit, since Keir Starmer started to undo Brexit.
Yeah, and Alex Cairns, there were Keir Starmer was in the Commons in the months leading up to the election, having a go at Rishi Sunak, accusing him of wanting to do the same thing. And yet, after winning power, he apparently does do exactly what he accused the Tories of doing.
But actually, interestingly, a lot of people forget that actually they're looking at the coffers, essentially, and deciding we need to raise some capital, right? A lot of money was wasted with PPE. Everyone likes to forget about that. And, yeah, you only say it's 1.5 billion. But actually, the reality is, as Reem says, it's got to be means-tested. Even Kemi Badenoch's talked about that. There's lots of people that don't need it and are getting it. And that's a ridiculous situation. It just shouldn't be like that in one of the biggest countries in the world, that people are getting £300-400 when they don't need it.
I just think that the very, very wealthy people, 25% of pensioners are millionaires. Those particular people should not be getting... Because it's true, they should not be getting money from hard-working taxpayers, and ultimately we spend huge amounts of money on pensions. Those, by the way, those pensioners that can't afford their energy bills will be in receipt of payments and will be able to get pension uptake.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Doris, who worked hard all her life to buy her family home, her children have gone, maybe her husband's died, and is left in a house where the capital has increased massively, house prices have gone up. Doesn't mean she's a millionaire, it just means that she's living
in a house. Good for her, sell the house. Sell the house and take the money and use it to pay for energy bills. Don't expect to be paid for by taxpayers.
Easier said than done. Houses are very sentimental people, especially older people. If you
don't care. Sell your house. Why should taxpayers have to pay for you?
Oh, right, OK. All right, Reem, Alex Cairns Armstrong, thank you very much. We'll be going back to Patrick at the top of the 10 o'clock hour in about 15 minutes' time, so stay tuned for that. But up next, Nigel Farage has written to over 1,000 councillors urging them to defect to Reform UK before it's too late. His words, not mine. Reform's immigration and justice spokeswoman Anne Widdecombe has the inside track. She joins me next.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country and, most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is...
who's going to pay it? Budget Day all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice. Foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
Well, I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grape to the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in still vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, Reform UK today welcomes 3 independent councillors to their party, joining the 3 Tory councillors who defected yesterday. All 3 of the former independents who were elected in 2023 in Mansfield, Nottingham, were welcomed today by Reform's Deputy Leader Richard Tice and Reform MP Lee Anderson. And it comes after their leader, Nigel Farage, yesterday wrote to over 1,300 Tory councillors in England, urging them to defect to his party ahead of the local elections next year. Speaking to GB News earlier today, he had a warning for them.
And what I'm saying is this: Reform are taking these elections very seriously. We will be standing candidates against them. They will almost certainly, most of them, lose their seats. But if they believe in the same values and principles that we do, very happy to consider them becoming candidates for us.
OK, well, I'm joined now by Reform spokeswoman Anne Widdicombe. Anne, good evening. Thank you for joining me. I have been discussing this with Richard Tice yesterday as well. I said to him, when you listen to the likes of Robert Jenrick, who's promising to do what you're promising to do, leave the ECHR, get control of migration, I asked Richard, and I'll ask you as well, why would anyone defect to Reform if the Tories seem to be getting themselves together?
Well, first of all, there's no evidence that they're getting themselves together, nor any evidence that Robert Jenrick, whose policies those are, is going to win. And Kemi certainly at the moment is very policy-like. But more important than that, this is something which Reform has always had at the head of its agenda. We can be trusted with it, not to talk, but to actually do. And therefore, I think people are very sympathetically inclined. It isn't just councillors who are crossing. Our membership is going up day by day. We've pretty well overtaken the Tories, or we're very close to, in terms of membership. We appeal because we are a common sense party, we're a party of proportionality, and we're a party which deals with those things which are worrying people.
OK. Can you explain... Actually, first of all, how many members have you got now? Can you reveal?
Well, when I last heard, I think it was something like approaching 90,000, but I don't put my hand on the good book when I say that, because that information was at least a month ago.
Wow. That is more than the Conservative Party, isn't it?
No, I think the Conservatives are around about the same. You would have to ask the party chairman. You'd have to ask Thea for exact figures.
Well, I mean, even so, even if it is around about the same amount for such a new party, I guess props to you on that front. In terms of councillors, what is the thinking targeting councillors and not, say, MPs, Tory MPs?
Because the local council elections are coming. They're very soon. They're next year. We're not going to have a general election, sadly. We're not going to have a general election for about another 4.5 years.
And what's your target for the local elections? How many defections do you want? How many seats does Reform want to achieve?
No, we're not going to play that game any more than we were lured into playing that game before the general election when you wanted us to say how many seats, etc. etc. We are simply going to do our best. We are going to put to the public what we believe. And at the moment, with defections already happening, with our general membership already rising, with people still not knowing what the Tories are going to end up doing, and the Tories still very split, we shouldn't forget. We are not split. Reform is the most united party at the moment in the British system. We are not split, and I think we're going to do extremely well.
And just remind me, have you got a new setup or a new process where you've got local branches being set up?
Yes, we have. We're setting up branches. They're not everywhere yet. Give us a chance. But a lot of branches have been set up. Local branches, so that we're like all the other parties, we're a truly democratic party. And gradually, we will expand that network of local branches. But we've already set them up. And as soon as things are sorted out in terms of money, constitution, etc., for those individual branches, we shall be raring to go. And the interesting thing is, that our average branch meeting, little local branches, I'm not talking about constituency-wide, little local branches. People like Ben Habib are saying they're addressing 100 people. Well, the Tories should be so lucky. The last one I addressed for the Tories, I think there were 2 men and a dog, and the men were only there because the dog had wandered in.
OK, well, and let's get stuck into some red meat for Reform voters. Unfortunately, it's grim news, but it's happened today. We can exclusively reveal on this channel the number of migrants crossing the channel into England so far this year has already now surpassed the entire total for 2023. Today's milestone was reached when the Border Force vessel Typhoon arrived in Dover with 55 migrants on board, bringing, Anne, this year's total to 29,451. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I would ask, what do we expect? We have a government which has no policy on this at all, except some vague promise to smash the gangs. No policy for dealing with the people who are arriving. They're arriving daily almost. No policies at all. Therefore, what do you expect? You expect record numbers to come. Where, in the end, we are going to put them. Already we're spending a fortune on hotels. We don't appear to have a proper system for returns. Reform is the only party, absolutely the only party, which has got a several-point plan to sort this mess out. We're the only ones. Now, Keir Starmer is supposed to be responsible for this. What's he doing? Answer, nothing. Huge policy vacuum.
Well, they're smashing the gangs, Anne.
Are they? You might as well say you're going to smash the mafia. I don't know if you smash one gang, another one comes along. I mean, don't they know that? Are they so stupid that they don't know that?
And what would Reform do then? You said there's a 7-point plan. Give us 1 or 2 of them quickly. We've got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I said a several-point plan, actually. Yeah.
Sorry.
What we are... Yeah, no, it's OK. What we are doing is, first of all, we will turn the votes back. Secondly, we acknowledge some will still get through. Those people will be immediately detained in secure accommodation while their cases are processed, and to putting people in hotels so that we know where they are and they can't just disappear. We will also say right from the start that if you've arrived in this country illegally, you have no claim to asylum, particularly when you've come from a safe country like France, for heaven's sake.
OK, Anne Widdecombe, thank you for joining me this evening. Very much appreciate it. Yeah, it's such a good point. We're spending tens of £1 million a day. I mean, I think it's £10 to £15 million on migrant hotels at a time when you're stripping. How does that make sense? I do not know. Patrick will be live back in Stanley, County Durham, in just a couple of minutes. Stick with us for that. He'll be speaking to pensioners who've got a very clear message for Sir Keir Starmer. This is Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Back in a sec.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, 3 areas of weather tomorrow. A fine day for many, but there will be some wet weather in the far northwest and quite grey and a little damp in the far southeast. The bigger picture shows an area of low pressure down to the southwest. That is just edging away. This weather front is moving north, bringing some damp conditions through this evening across central and southern Scotland, clearing away from northeast England. At the same time, overnight, some patchy rain just trickling up from France towards Kent and maybe even into the London area. But most places dry and clear through the nights. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but generally pretty mild for the end of October. Into tomorrow, and as I said, for many of us, it's a fine day, but there will be a weather front bringing cloud and rain into the Outer Hebrides and across the Northern Isles, and that will only slowly track its way southwards across parts of the mainland down towards the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's a dry start to the weekend. Could be some fog around, and further south, maybe a little misty in places. Certainly a grey start for East Anglia in the southeast. A little bit of rain and drizzle likely here. Staying quite damp, actually, across parts of the southeast for most of the day. Quite windy in the far southwest, but not as windy as today. But for the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall, still a noticeable breeze. Could be the odd shower, but much of southwest England, Wales, northern England, eastern Scotland, dry and fine. That weather front will bring cloud and rain to the west coast of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But in the sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, all that wet weather's pretty much out of the way. It makes for a cold start to Sunday, but generally a good-looking day across the bulk of England and Wales. Plenty of sunshine. Scotland, Northern Ireland, mostly starting dry, but more rain coming in from the northwest as the day goes on. Temperature's not as high, and after that chilly start, we'll probably get up to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadelman-Koo, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees-Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage, and it's it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them, they're no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 p.m. and welcome to a very special edition of Patrick Christys Tonight.
Get your act together and have a change of heart and see our old people and take care of them.
Just get his thinking head on a bit more and just start thinking about the pensioners.
He's got to get out of that Westminster bubble.
I'm here at Stanley Indoor Bowl Centre and Community Hub, and some people around here are absolutely fuming.
Yes, of course they are, because, they've put nothing into this country at all.
but they're living in hotels, now they're getting houses, yet I've worked all my life. I've got a little bit savings, so that's held against me.
Well, it's not fair, is it? He's right. Just have a look at what happened today.
Well, the number for the whole of last year was 29,437. Just in the last few minutes, we have overtaken that number, 29,451.
You're paying for them to all have a warm bed and room this winter, aren't you? Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, he couldn't tell you what a woman is.
No, I just...
A woman can't have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps.
And now he can't tell you what a working person is.
OK, so for someone who works but gets their income from assets as well, such as shares of property, are they a working person?
Well, they wouldn't come within my definition.
But forget about Keir Starmer, because I want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for helping us smash our target of £260,000 for our fundraiser.
3 minutes is a long time in 8 degrees. 8 degrees is cold. It's right. Cold water. Generally, cold water is anything less than sort of 20 degrees.
Tomorrow, all I have to do is climb to the top of that mountain and dive into Stickle Tarn to do that freezing cold swim to raise awareness for pensioners who will be freezing cold in their own homes this winter. To donate, you can go to justgiving.com/page/save our seniors. But right now, Ben Leo's taking care of things in the studio. Who's on your panel again, Ben?
Joining me tonight, it's the comms chief at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim, the political commentator, Alex Armstrong, and the CEO of the Youth Vote, Alex Cairns. Big next hour coming up. We're going to be going back to Patrick live up in County Durham, but first, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. Just coming up to 4 minutes past 10. The top story tonight, a prolific online predator in the UK's largest ever catfishing case has been jailed for life today with a minimum of 20 years. Alexander McCartney admitted 185 charges, including the manslaughter of Kimran Thomas, a 12-year-old girl from the US who took her own life after his blackmail and abuse. The 26-year-old, described as utterly remorseless, targeted about 3,500 victims, using Snapchat and other social messaging sites to manipulate children into sending explicit material. The court heard today details too graphic to share tonight, including threats to involve victims' younger siblings. The judge at Belfast Court said the case has shaken communities worldwide and called McCartney's actions excruciating. The number of migrant crossings in the English Channel this year has already overtaken 2023's total. That milestone today came as the Border Force vessel Typhoon arrived in Dover with 55 migrants, bringing this year's figure to 29,451. With over 1,200 arrivals this week alone, driven by calmer seas, officials say up to 40,000 could cross by the end of this year. That's despite the Labour government's pledge to smash the gangs. Tommy Robinson is in custody tonight ahead of a large demonstration planned by his supporters in London this weekend. Kent police confirmed the 41-year-old's arrest as he faces potential jail time for alleged contempt of court. Robinson, charged under his real name, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, is also accused of refusing to provide his phone's PIN when questioned by border officers in July. Ahead of tomorrow's protests, activists have been calling for support, claiming the state is trying to silence Robinson's views on immigration. The Metropolitan Police says a significant presence is planned tomorrow to ensure safety amid expected counter-protests. A major manhunt is underway tonight for a 31-year-old prisoner who escaped from HMP Kirkham. Lancashire Police tonight named Elliot Riley as the inmate who jumped a fence at the jail earlier this week. That was as hundreds of others were released under a nationwide early release scheme. Police say the search is still active and they're urging anyone with information to call 101 or, if spotted, to dial 999. In other news, 2 Scottish pensioners have received the green light to sue both the Westminster and Scottish governments over the cuts to winter fuel payments, claiming they're guilty of damaging the welfare of pensioners. Peter and Florence Fanning argue that the decision to cut the payments was made unlawfully without proper consultation with pensioners. Their legal action, launched in September, had the backing from former First Minister Alex Salmond, who died earlier this month. It comes as critics, including trade unions and older people's groups, have condemned the means testing of the benefit as they say a manifest injustice. A mother has been given an indefinite hospital order after stabbing her 10-year-old daughter to death, believing she was being targeted by lasers and technology. Jaskirat Kaur, who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia, admitted to killing her daughter, Shay Kang, at their West Midlands home in March. The 33-year-old mother called police saying, "My child is dead," just hours after the attack, which involved a Swiss Army knife. Shay, described as bright and fun-loving by her school, was found with 11 stab wounds to her chest. And just before I go, a quick breaking line. We're hearing ahead of the budget coming up on Wednesday next week. The Times newspaper reporting tonight that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, will increase employers' national insurance by 2%, expected to help fund the National Health Service. The move is part of a wider push to cover rising public spending. That, according to the Times newspaper tonight, that the Chancellor will increase employers' national insurance amid much speculation in recent days. That increase by up to 2%. That is the latest from the newsroom for now. I'll hand you straight back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to a slightly unusual Patrick Christys tonight. I am at the Stanley Indoor Bowl Centre. Why? Well, the people here have a heck of a lot to say. Do you not think it feels a little bit like Keir Starmer will roll the red carpet out for anyone? Unless, of course, you happen to be a poor pensioner. Here is our Prime Minister desperately trying to justify cutting the winter fuel payments for the elderly, despite the fact that Labour's own research showed that it could kill 4,000 of them.
I don't want to cut the winter fuel allowance. I don't think anybody government wants to do that. But we've got to fix the foundations of our economy. And that's what this is all about, making sure that we fix the foundations. And then, having done that, that we can build a better future that pensioners and so many other people voted for in this election. So this is a tough decision. Not a decision I want to make, but I'm absolutely determined. We'll stabilise the economy and fix the foundations. And then on that, we will build the better Britain that we were elected into government with a strong mandate to bring about.
Keir Starmer said that every single pensioner under him would be richer. Labour and their supporters, they want you to think that all of these pensioners are millionaires. Well, I went to Lenin Terrace earlier on, just round the corner from where I am now. And I met 88-year-old Barry, and he revealed to us some of the traumas that he'd suffered when he spent his life working down the pit.
There, 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 close calls. Yeah. Just rattle off what happened to you one time. You had quite a bad injury, didn't you?
The first one was when I was 18 and a half. I was hit in the face with a cold shot. I was blinded for a month. And then I was crushed by a big stone later on. And then the last one was we had about 4.5 tons of steel fell on us. And damaged my spine, my pelvis was split wide open, my right leg broke below the knee, and my right ankle crushed.
That's the kind of person who's losing the winter fuel payment. But it's not just him, it's people like Billy as well. You have had yours cut because you got what's called a pit pension. Yeah. Is that right? Could you just...
On top of my state pension, so... the top bracket, I'm past that, so I don't get the extra 350 quid, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that does mean that you are going to struggle to heat your home this winter, doesn't it?
It's a struggle up here, it was sunny, you know what I mean? It's cold, but like, I'd rather heat myself and move around the room, you know.
And in order to do that and to keep yourself warm as you move around your home, what is it that you do?
I bought a heater last year, and I just swapped room to room with it. Yeah, it's over there.
So it's that heater here. So you take that heater with you from room to room as you go around?
Yeah, when it gets really cold, nothing. You've got to up here. It's standing, you know what I mean?
A lot of people out there in Britain right now think that maybe Keir Starmer should spend a little bit less time in Lord Alley's penthouse and a bit more time in places like Stanley. Billy's got a message for him.
No, I don't think they live in the real world. I think they just live out the books and that. If they moved 10 down the street up here, he wouldn't have knocked the heating on the head, because it's different weather up in the northeast, plus Scotland and that. Down there, it's 2 top coats warmer. You know what I mean? It's yeah. I could live with a t-shirt on down there. You know what I mean? Because I'm an outgoing person, but up here, it's freezing.
What would your message be to Keir Starmer? Do you think it's fair, really? Is that what you voted for? Because you voted for Labour, didn't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't vote for them again, because, to be honest, he doesn't know what it's like living from there. He should come up here and see and get out on the streets and see people.
It is that question of fairness, isn't it, and injustice. And it's not lost on people like Billy, a million others like him, that it was just revealed that the cost for an asylum seeker per year is £41,000 for their accommodation. Billy's not that happy with that. Do you feel as though the government is prioritising asylum seekers and illegal migrants over people like yourself?
Yes, of course they are, because, I mean, they've put nothing into this country at all, but they're living in hotels, now they're getting houses, yet I've worked all my life. I've got a little bit savings, so that's held against me.
The fact is that every single door I knocked on here in what was traditionally a Labour heartland, pit country, as it were, had a story exactly like that. Here are just a couple more.
Get your act together and have a change of heart and see our old people and take care of them. You need to have a walk around and just see the state of the place and how old people are living around here. And maybe you get an idea and maybe have a bit of a conscience if you saw it.
Just get his thinking head on a bit more and just start thinking about the pensioners instead of all the rich people.
I think he needs to rethink it. He needs to get out and speak to people, see how they're struggling, and then go from there. But he needs to get out. He's got to get out of that Westminster bubble.
Their messages to Keir Starmer, and it's fair to say that all the people around here, pretty much anyway, think that if it had been in the Labour manifesto, they wouldn't have voted for it. And there is a real risk that Keir Starmer could go down in history as the man who chose to freeze the elderly. Back to you in the studio, Bam.
Just extraordinary reporting. That chap Billy there, I mean, a guy that's grafted all his life down the pits, he's worked hard, he's now got a humble pit pension, as he calls it, and he has to carry a single heater around from room to room during cold winters just to keep himself and his poor dog warm. It beggars belief. And he said migrants over pensioners were spending millions of pounds a day on hotel rooms, food, dental care, whatever else for migrants, and yet our pensioners are freezing to death, literally by Labour's own research, up to £4,000 a year. It beggars belief. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel. Communications Officer at the IEA, Reem Ibrahim, political commentator Alex Armstrong, and the CEO of Youth Vote, Alex Cairns. Alex Armstrong, let's start with you. Poor Billy there, who Patrick spoke to a bit earlier today. He said it's migrants over pensioners.
Yeah, well, it's another example of two-tier Keir, isn't it? He's always got two different rules for people he politically favours over those he doesn't. And I think the people of County Durham are very smart. They can see through Labour's tactics and ploys. They're happy to dish out millions for illegal immigrants who have never paid a penny in tax to our people of our country or built any infrastructure or even a life here. And yet our pensioners who have paid into the system their entire lives, who might have hit hard times or may not be able to work anymore, unfortunately, for whatever reason, now have to cough up extra because of the insane net zero policies that successive governments have inflicted upon them, of which they never asked for in the first place.
Reem, have you got a bit more sympathy, or do you want to make an apology after seeing Patrick's report there for your comments in the first hour? Because seeing the human stories behind the headlines kind of trumps your comments saying, just sell your house, just get it,
So I'm not going to apologise. I take nothing back. But what I will say is I do think it is incredibly important that we do highlight these human stories. I think it's really important that we do talk about where this money is going. And I actually completely agree with Alex. I think it is absurd that we are spending huge amounts of money on these migrants that haven't paid into the system at all. I completely agree with that. I would get rid of those policies entirely. However, when we're thinking about this from a wider public sector spending measures, we're thinking about this within those particular people. If you cannot afford to live your life as a pensioner, you can get pension credit. There are those offerings.
Yes, but Reem, lots of these people struggling are on pension credit. They're above the threshold by £500, £1,000. I know many elderly people on the south coast where I live. They're not living the life of luxury, meeting their friends for scones and playing bridge. They are skint, cold pensioners.
So those particular people, if you can get pension credit, then you are going to be receiving it. If you are not applicable for it, then you can afford your energy bills. Alex is right in that the best way to reduce.
That's just not true. If you can afford it,
if you're not receiving pension credit, you can afford your energy bills.
That's not true.
You are receiving huge amounts.
There are working families in this country who are taking home 30, 40, 50 grand a year who still can't afford their energy bills. How are old people earning no money meant to afford their energy bills when families
Then
can't?
let's solve the problem of high energy bills, right? I think that Alex is right. The best way to do that is to increase the supply of energy. It's Economics 101. Increase the supply, prices come down. We've got to be fracking more. So the government cancelling all of these North Sea oil licences is entirely absurd.
Fine, I agree.
But also introducing nuclear energy.
OK, I agree with that. But in the meantime, in the interim, why is it the pensioners who are taking the brunt? Alex Cairns?
Look, I know that on this topic, a lot of people get very, very upset, right? But actually, if we take a step back, there's a very small portion of society that are actually being affected by this. When we talk about the fact that 4,000 pensioners will freeze, how many pensioners are there in the United Kingdom, right? Every tough decision.
How many dead pensioners before it's an issue?
But the reality is...
No, answer that question.
No.
How many dead pensioners before it's an issue?
But I don't know, because, look, every single year there's naturally...
Any pensioner that dies as a result of it would be an issue, but the point is that that's not going to...
But how would you actually show that as a result of this measure that they would pass away? I'd love to know what the definition...
Well, your Labour Party's own research says up to 4,000 pensioners would die as a result of this.
But I just, even whoever came up with that research within the Labour Party, I think actually that is a ridiculous stat, right? I don't understand how there's a definition where if you get rid of the winter fuel payment... I mean, look, everyone's energy bills are going to be different. There's a whole...
ask you again then, Alex, how many dead pensioners is it worth for this policy?
But I'm not going to...
At least one. But how many is it worth?
But, Ben, I'm not going to get into that, because the reality is there's a broader point here, right, where government has to make tough choices. And, look, lots of pensioners, when they were buying houses years and years ago where they would cost £10,000, look at the young people that can't even afford to get houses, right? Lots of young people, single parents are struggling, right? Government's about choices. If we don't cut it from pensioners, we'll have to cut it from somewhere else, right?
I think Alex is struggling because this is, unfortunately, the checkmate the Labour Party's put itself in. It's forever appealed as the party of compassion, of people. It promised it would never betray the pensioners. Now we're in a position where those lies, unfortunately, have been exposed, and the Labour Party's in a position now where it either has to U-turn or kill pensioners in the winter, which it will do. It will kill pensioners this winter, and the blood will be in Keir Starmer's hands. The reality is the public need to wake up. Labour is the party of the wealthy. It is not the party of the working class, and the quicker people wake up to that, in 4 years' time, we'll be rid of them.
Well, Patrick's proved it tonight. He's gone to a Labour stronghold, to a mining town, which always votes Labour. Billy voted Labour. He said then, and they've betrayed them. Labour is now the party of middle-class, muesli-munching, tofu-scoffing wokeratis down in the south-east. Forget working people. Reem, Alex, thank you very much. We'll be back very shortly. Coming up, I'll bring you all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press with my panel, and we'll be going back to Patrick in Stanley, where he'll be speaking to a cold water swimming expert as he prepares to plunge himself in freezing cold water at the top of Stickle Tarn tomorrow. Good luck to you, Patrick. But first, there was a grim migrant milestone today in the Channel. The number of migrants arriving in the UK this year has now, unfortunately, overtaken the total for the whole of 2023. But former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle thinks the migrant crisis, get this, is over-exaggerated. He joins me next.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Georgia. Your story is incredible. Just remind us of it. You quit running in, was it 2017? Because I mean, to be quite frank, your body was knackered, you had injuries, you thought you couldn't go on anymore. But then you started running again at Parkrun in 2022. And of course, this summer at the Olympics, you won bronze.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it has been a bit of a journey. And yeah, there was a period of time where I stopped running completely. And then Parkrun was just something I got into with my friends, my family, just local community. And I started to see the improvements that led me to get back in contact with my old coach and just worked my way back up to elite level running and got a bronze medal this summer in Paris.
Did you ever think that would happen when you were beginning to take part in parkruns again? Did you ever think you'd be winning bronze in the 1500 metres at the Olympics?
No, not at all. It would have been absolutely bonkers, I think, to think that at the time. It was just building my way up, but it was all about finding happiness in running again. And that's really what Parkrun does, I think, really well.
And can you just tell us in the audience what had happened to you in 2017?
So I had been like a good junior athlete. I had gone over to the US on a track scholarship at university, and I just experienced so many different injuries. So various stress fractures in my shins, and I just graduated and just thought there's no way I can run anymore. So took a big break. And then, yeah, over the past few years, I just got back into running slowly, built it up, and Parkrun is just something that is on every Saturday. So many parks across the UK, very accessible, free. So it was just a really good way to get back into a fun but semi-level of competitive running.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, unfortunately, the number of migrants crossing the Channel into the UK so far this year has already surpassed the entire total for 2023. Today's milestone was reached when the Border Force vessel Typhoon arrived in Dover with 55 migrants on board, bringing this year's total to 29,451, just over the recorded total for the whole of last year. So with this new development, has this Labour government only made the small boats crisis worse? Joining me now is former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle. Good evening, Lloyd. Thanks for joining me. Has it only made things worse? Grim figures.
Well, I think figures that you have sensationalised, of course.
Hang on. Right, before you get started, what do you mean sensationalised? These are to the number correct figures. What are you talking about?
Well, let's put them into context. The asylum applications of people coming to the UK was at its peak in the early 2000s. The Labour Party managed to bring it down to about 17,000 a year in 2010. And since then, under Conservative governments, it has slowly creeped up, but it's nowhere near the peak that it was in the late 90s and early 2000s before Labour took action. It's far less than it was.
Lloyd,
so when I say sensationalised, yes, no, let me finish. When I say sensationalised, I mean you fail to put in context the fact that these are rather small numbers compared to what we've had over the last 20 years.
OK, Lloyd, so it's a record on last year. It's expected up to 40,000 are going to arrive this year.
Whether this year is different to the weather last year.
Lloyd, how many undocumented, mostly fighting-age males is acceptable for you to come into the country? We don't know their history, we don't know their background, they throw their passports in the water.
When Labour was last in power and when we last left power, we got that number down to about 20,000. That's where we should be aiming to. But it took us 10 years after we picked up the mess from the Conservatives last time. It will take 10 years again to pick up the mess from the Conservatives' migration policies this time around. But to try and sensationalise it, to say it is some it's awful this year in the last few months because Labour's got in, is complete madness.
You're making this.
Their migration journey.
Stop ranting a second. Stop ranting a second and let me finish. You're making this a party. You're making this a party political issue, blaming the Tories. You're saying that the Tories did this. Both governments have messed up. Both governments have made a complete hash of it over recent decades. And you're saying that these. Hang on, let me finish. Let me finish, Lloyd. Lloyd, let me finish. Otherwise, there's no point doing this. Let me finish.
Go on. You finish your point.
You're saying the numbers are sensationalised. Well, tell that to the people who have died at the hands of illegal boat migrants over the past couple of years. 80% of boat migrants over the last 12 months have been 40-year-old, under 40 males. For under 40-year-old fighting-age males, 80% of them. You're talking about women and children and refugees. They're all fighting-age males. We had 70-year-old Terence Carney up in Liverpool, stabbed to death using a cash machine when he was knifed by a Moroccan, Ahmed Alid, who was an asylum seeker. Tom Roberts, a poor young lad down in Bournemouth, 21-year-old, lost his life, fatally stabbed in the chest.
You are better than this. This is gutter stuff. The percentage of asylum seekers that commit crimes is broadly the same as the percentage of the general population that commit crimes. Some will commit horrible crimes, of course, but you are better than this gutter politics of bringing the few examples of awful tragedies that should never have happened. But the fact that they're migrants is neither here nor there. You know that. Stop being so stupid.
Lloyd, if we have our own problems, we have our own criminals, we have English people who stab people, why should we roll out the red carpet to other criminals?
The same percentage. Look, if you take 100 people anywhere in the world, a percentage of them will not be good. Our job, of course, is to catch the people who aren't good. But what you look at is there a bigger percentage of people that are criminals coming who are asylum seekers? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then I'm afraid your points are just scaremongering rubbish.
Well, it's not scaremongering, Lloyd. It's not scaremongering because there are dead bodies. There are dead bodies here. In February, in February, an asylum seeker tried to push a pensioner onto the tube tracks in London because he thought he gave him a dirty look. These are the people making their way into the country, undocumented.
And a non-asylum seeker has murdered someone. And a non-asylum seeker has committed a crime. What is the point of saying this? Nothing apart from scaremongering. It is below you. What is important to say is that the figures have rocketed in the last few years on boat crossings, and that is a real problem. And that is because of the Conservatives' policies. You don't turn that around overnight. You can't turn that around in a year even. And the government's only been in for a few months. What you need to do is change your migration
look at the mess
policies,
they've made of it.
Change your processing policies. And last time Labour was in, we did it, and we'll do it again.
Well, last time Labour was in, Tony Blair opened the floodgates to tens of millions of legal migrants, and look where we are today.
I'm terribly sorry. And again, more rubbish from you. It is the Conservative government that opened up 100,000 net migration, hundreds of thousands of net migration last year of people just for carers visas. Never happened before. The migration figures of legal migration is higher than they've ever been before, and that's because we left the European Union. We all know that. That is the disastrous policy of the Conservatives and of Brexit. And you will pretend that it doesn't exist. You will pretend, of course, that it was all about a points-based system, but we know points-based migration systems increase migration.
You keep doing what the current government does and points to the Tories all the time, saying, but look at the Tories,
yes,
look at the
Tories. Because they were the government for the last 15 years until last few months ago. That's why you point to the last government, Lloyd, as if they're the ones that implemented the policies.
Yeah, you talk to me as if I'm some sort of like massive Tory supporter, who needs to defend the Tories. I don't care about either of them.
I'm just saying that you're reporting the facts wrong.
Well, not really. I've given you the stats. We have had a producer. We've had a producer down at Dover today, counting those migrants coming in one by one. Every boat. We're there before anyone else. No other channel does that. No other media organisation does that. We have the numbers before everyone else.
Put them in context, and then you'll find that actually the numbers are down over the long term. There is a problem, of course, with boat crossings that the Tories created, and that its only party that has ever historically dealt with these things is Labour.
Yeah. All right, Lloyd, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Even today, an asylum seeker accused, I must stress, accused of murdering a British asylum hotel worker. He'll be in court fairly shortly. But, yeah, there we go. Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. Right, it's going to be a big week next week because it's going to be the budget. There's exclusive and very special coverage on GB News next Wednesday.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country and, most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is...
who's going to pay it? Budget Day all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I know it's been dubbed the budget of nightmares, a Halloween budget I've been calling it Nightmare on Reeve Street, but I'm so excited to see what happens next Wednesday, not least because it's going to have such an effect, a grave effect on many people, and it's going to be an epic couple of weeks, actually, the US election shortly after that as well. Next Wednesday, Patrick will be joined live by a studio audience. If you want to be part of it, go to www.sroaudiences.com. That's Sierra Romeo Oscar Audiences.com to secure your ticket. He'll get reaction to the budget from a panel of political heavyweights and his regular superstar panellists. You could be a part of all that, so make sure you get your tickets before they sell out. Coming up, we'll go back to Patrick in Stanley, where he'll be speaking to a cold water swimming expert as he prepares to plunge himself in the freezing cold water at the top of Stickle Tarn tomorrow. Back in just a tick.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, 3 areas of weather tomorrow. A fine day for many, but there will be some wet weather in the far northwest and quite grey and a little damp in the far southeast. The bigger picture shows an area of low pressure down to the southwest. That is just edging away. This weather front is moving north, bringing some damp conditions through this evening across central and southern Scotland, clearing away from northeast England. At the same time, overnight, some patchy rain just trickling up from France towards Kent and maybe even into the London area. But most places dry and clear through the nights. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but generally pretty mild for the end of October. Into tomorrow, and as I said, for many of us, it's a fine day, but there will be a weather front bringing cloud and rain into the Outer Hebrides and across the Northern Isles, and that will only slowly track its way southwards across parts of the mainland down towards the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's a dry start to the weekend. Could be some fog around, and further south, maybe a little misty in places. Certainly a grey start for East Anglia in the southeast. A little bit of rain and drizzle likely here. Staying quite damp, actually, across parts of the southeast for most of the day. Quite windy in the far southwest, but not as windy as today. But for the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall, still a noticeable breeze. Could be the odd shower, but much of southwest England, Wales, northern England, eastern Scotland, dry and fine. That weather front will bring cloud and rain to the west coast of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But in the sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, all that wet weather's pretty much out of the way. It makes for a cold start to Sunday, but generally a good-looking day across the bulk of England and Wales. Plenty of sunshine. Scotland, Northern Ireland, mostly starting dry, but more rain coming in from the northwest as the day goes on. Temperature's not as high, and after that chilly start, we'll probably get up to 12, 13, maybe 14 degrees Celsius. Goodbye.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dame.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, and oh my gosh, what a show. I need a cup of tea, please, somebody. The first newspapers have just dropped. Let's get stuck into these. The Daily Mail, Starmer's insult to Middle Britain. Sir Keir Starmer was last night accused of plotting a class war against Middle Britain. The Eye, Rachel Reeves faces growing Labour backlash over tax squeeze for working people. Yes, indeed, what is a working person? Who knows? The Sun, big Jeremy Clarkson exclusive. Booze, fags, meat, fun. I can have diddly squat if I want to carry on living. That's after revelations that Jezza has been suffering some heart problems in recent months and years. The Daily Express, no one should suffer in Labour's fuel pay mess. OAPs must be given a cast iron guarantee they won't miss out on fuel payments this winter. To pension credit delays, Labour's being warned. The Daily Mirror, lead with a Pride of Britain story. I watched this last night, actually. It was very heartwarming. Actor Michael Sheen was starstruck when he met 8-year-old Florrie Bark at the Mirror's Pride of Britain Awards. Very good. And the Daily Telegraph, workers' taxes will rise, admits the Chancellor. A nice little picture there of the Queen, Camilla, in Samoa. That was their last day there, I think. They should soon be heading back to Blighty. And, yeah, let's get stuck into this story at the Times. The budget will, breaking tonight, will place bigger burdens on businesses. Rachel Reeves will increase employers' national insurance contributions by up to 2%. So, Alex Armstrong, so much for no tax rises for working people.
Yeah, well, obviously we know that businesses pass this tax on to their employees through different methods, and it will come in the form of lack of pay rises and everything else. And this is really just clever politics the Labour Party have been trying to play with their words, saying they won't tax working people. Well, the businesses that pay those working people are getting taxed. So it's just crafty, lefty words. That's what this is all about. It's very Orwellian, actually. They say to you, well, we promised we weren't going to tax working class people or working people, whatever that means. And now when they come to being criticised about it, they say, well, we didn't lie. We're not taxing the people, we're taxing the businesses. It's clever politics, again, Ben. It's just crafty Labour tactics. Never trust the left with the economics.
Alex Cairns, I can't believe the loose language, even today, from Keir Starmer when he's asked to define a working person. You know, the absolute word salad he was coming out with, talking about the mind's eye and, you know, maybe it's somebody who can't write a cheque if times are slightly hard. You know, I was sat there watching it thinking, what the hell are you talking about? You're using such flimsy language in the week leading up to a massive, massive budget that's going to affect so many people, and you still can't be straight with the nation.
Well, actually, in fairness, you know, I saw some of the debate that you're talking about, and actually he talked about working people live month to month. And actually, let's be honest about this, right? There's going to be tough choices. He doesn't want to raise corporation tax. He doesn't want to raise income tax for working people, right? So where is he going to deal with the economic black hole? He's going to have to deal with it somewhere.
Cut spending, right? I mean, ultimately, there is a difference between the impact of the tax and the incidence of the tax. The impact of the tax is who immediately pays it. So in this instance, it is the employers. The incidence of the tax is who actually bears the brunt of those costs. That ends up being employees as a result of higher prices or indeed lower wages or indeed no pay rises at all. So we're thinking about the real long-term consequences of this. It is absolutely impossible to increase taxes substantially and raise a substantial amount of money for the Treasury without hurting working people. So it's absolutely impossible.
Is this rise on national insurance contributions on employers, is that a tax on working people, really?
Absolutely. Any increase, any substantial increase in taxes will always be passed on to employees.
Alex Cairns, they've told porkies you're lot, haven't they, Keir Starmer?
No, they haven't. I don't agree with I don't agree with that at all. The reality is, right, when you say cut spending, I mean, cut spending where? They're going to have to
I can think of a million.
They're going to have to make tough choices, Reem, right? And they've looked at it and they're like, right, OK, we don't want to raise income tax, we don't want to raise national insurance for employees, we don't want to raise corporation tax, so we've looked at a situation where we're going to have to, and by the way, it's 1 to 2% increase, right? The idea that if they do that...
13.8%.
I'll tell you what...
It's not gone up, it's not gone up for many years.
One at a time. We're talking about where to cut things. Well, we've just seen the government cut the winter fuel payments we've been talking about tonight. So they do have the will to do it only where it matters to them, and where they don't care about pensioners, obviously, do they? So the reality is here, this is a government that promised it's going to grow Britain. It was going to be the party of growth. This is not the party of growth. You cannot tax your way to growth. It is economics 101. If you want an economy that thrives, you must allow people to have money back in their pockets. And this is the biggest tax burden in the history of our country.
Alex Cairns, so Labour doesn't care about pensioners, they don't care about business, they don't care about aspirational people who want to invest their money because they're likely going to slam them with massive capital gains tax rates. They don't care about families who have grafted hard for generations to leave an asset maybe to their kids because there's talk of inheritance tax going up. Who do Labour care about?
Ben, that was a good speech, but I don't agree with any of that, right? I actually think, right, that we've got a situation where people saying that Labour don't care about business, they just did a big investment summit, right? They had all of the leading businesses there. The idea they don't care about pensioners, the pension amount went up, right? Yeah, but look, will you be complaining if they weren't doing it, and you'd be complaining if they did do it, but they didn't raise enough investment, right? It's all going to be about tough choices.
Billions of that were from the Tory party. Let's just clarify that it wasn't all from the Labour Party as well.
I'm sorry, this is absurd. This idea that they held a summit, they spoke to these business leaders, and somehow that means that they're pro-business. Let's be very clear about this. This is not a pro-business budget. We already have the highest tax burden since the Second World War. Under the Conservative government, it's increased significantly. Now, under the Labour government, they have just gone in and completely bulldozed it. This particular policy, specifically on national insurance increases, that will hurt working people because ultimately the bearer of the cost will pass on to employees. It will also, by the way, pass on to consumers. So anybody that buys anything in the shops, the prices will end up rising as a result of these increased costs.
Armstrong, last word to you.
Well, I was just going to say, we're talking about the party of growth. As soon as Angela Rayner and the Transport Secretary opened their mouth, they almost cost this country $1.3 billion worth of investment. So it certainly is not the party of growth.
Yeah, and I cited the... I need to double-check the year, actually, but when Ireland cut capital gains tax in half, they slashed it. Growth absolutely rocketed.
It did indeed.
After that.
12.5% is their corporation tax rate, 50% lower than the UK.
It's a much smaller country. You can't compare Ireland to the UK. Everyone always does that, right? They are party business.
Okay,
and they've got stats to back it up.
Compare it to the US, compare it to other European countries, compare it to Singapore. We have some of the highest taxes, some of the most burdensome taxes. And, my God, we need to start thinking about economic growth seriously.
And whose fault is that? Who's been in government?
Yeah, the Tories are. Yeah, Tories have got to blame.
Labour's only been there 5 minutes, so it's the Tories' fault. They're trying to clear up the mess.
Armstrong, Cairns, thank you very much. You'll be back in just a tick. Coming up, I'll bring you the rest of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And, most importantly, we'll go back to Patrick in Stanley for more on his epic cold water swim tomorrow. Rather him than me. Back in a tick.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yeah, next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen... how do you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have checked you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Bourne, thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts of forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world. Just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud. I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there. People who've really fought for justice for their children. People who are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, and let's go live now to Patrick, who is in Stanley, who's getting some advice ahead of his cold water swim tomorrow. Patrick, take it away.
Yeah, Ben, thank you for doing such a stellar job for me this evening back at base. But it's it from me here in Stanley now. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to drive from here to the Lake District, and I am going to climb Stickle Tarn. It's about an hour and a half to climb it, roughly, and then get to the top of it and swim in it. Now, the weather forecast, it's fair to say, has turned somewhat, and so it looked like it might be a bit brighter. Now, not so much. The weather forecast with wind chill is supposed to be a Baltic 1 degrees, and I could have winds of up to 25 kilometres an hour, I think it is, and heavy rain as well. So that's good. And then I'm going to have to get in the water. I'm joined now by Kevin O'Neill, who is a cold water swimming expert. Kevin, thank you very much. Great to have you back on the show. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, trying to raise money for Friends of the Elderly, you can go to justgiving.com/page/save our seniors. You have raised £264,000, so thank you. It's magnificent. But Kevin, last time I saw you, you told me that what I needed to do was have a cold shower every single day to practice. Is that right?
Sure, mate, yeah, that's exactly what you've done, yeah?
Yeah, I haven't done that. Is that a problem?
It's going to be pretty cold up there tomorrow, mate. It really is. But if you take your time, and I know you're going to be in your shorts and you're not going to have a wetsuit on, if you take your time, you focus on your breathing, and if you just follow these sort of steps as you're getting in, it's quite gradual as you're getting in there. Obviously, you probably might have something on your feet. I'm taking it as like beach shoes or something. You're going to go with something on your feet.
Probably was going to go barefoot, Kevin. You wouldn't recommend that?
You can go barefoot. It's okay. I would generally put an old pair of trainers on. Take an old pair of trainers with you just to take the edge off your feet. Because if you've got sharp rocks on your feet at the same time as trying to acclimatise to the cold, that's going to put your nervous system off a little bit as well. So get some old trainers on and just get yourselves ready. Keep your hands out for now. Slowly walking in up in the water. And as you're getting in, what you need to be doing is regulating your breathing. So any commitment that you make to the water, to the cold, you should be sort of taking a breath in through the nose, and you should be breathing out through sort of pursed lips or through your teeth. So it looks a bit like this. So you take a breath in.
If I don't do that, like if I get a bit, just I'm worried that I might lose it a bit when the cold hits, right?
Sure.
So if I'm not fully zen and everything, what can happen?
Well, basically, you are going to get some cold shock. It's a given when you're up there, and I know that you'll probably have people with you and stuff just to make sure that you're okay when you come out and you're warming up, and you'll have something warm to put on afterwards. But what you can expect is sometimes a bit of a gasp. If somebody was with you, generally we could normally sort of keep that away a little bit by focusing on the breath and sort of calming down a little bit, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. If you focus on your breathing, it's amazing how much more you're in control of your physiology, because the exhale is really, really important. The longer you get that exhale, the more in control of your body you'll be, the more in command of your parasympathetic nervous system you'll be.
So nice long exhale, as long as possibly can. Kevin, if the wind chill temperature is about 1 degree and it's pretty nippy up there, roughly what kind of temperature would you expect the water to be, and what length of time do you think is like a respectable amount of time for someone to spend in water that cold, having not done it before?
Well, yeah, I just had a quick check online. It looks as though it's going to be hovering around about sort of maybe 11 degrees, something like that in the water. So, not super cold, but cold enough. 11 degrees seems okay when you're thinking about air temperature. but 11 degrees is very cold. Anywhere near sort of 10 degrees is super cold. So 1 degree outside, you really want to be in there for no longer than about 3 minutes. You'll have had enough by then, I would imagine. So when you're getting into the cold,
about 3 minutes,
you get to your shoulders, about 3 minutes. Try not to put your head under. Head can be left out. It's safer to leave your head out of the water. But you'll enjoy it. But focus on your breathing. That is the most important thing. Any commitment that you make to going down into the cold, just make sure you're taking a breath in, and then you.
Okay.
As you're going down.
Well, Kevin, on that very zen note, can I just say a massive thank you to you? Seriously, it is much appreciated, mate. Genuinely, I know I was a bit kind of laughy-jokey at the start, but it is quite a serious business, and maybe I should have taken it more seriously, but it's happening tomorrow. So, Kevin, thank you very, very much. Kevin O'Neill there is a cold water swimming expert. Kevin, I'll check in with you on Monday, mate. All right, thank you. And look, just to say, yeah, I'm going to be there, Stickle Tarn tomorrow, climbing it, getting in it. The reason why is because I want to raise money for Friends of the Elderly, great charity, does a lot of great work for pensioners in need this winter. JustGiving.com/page/save our seniors. And remember, no matter how cold I get tomorrow, it will be nowhere near as cold as some pensioners in their own homes.
Great cause. Good luck tomorrow. I think I need my own sort of meditative deep breath after the show tonight. Here we go. Breathe out. Time now for the Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Reem, your Greatest Britain, please.
My Greatest Britain is Jeremy Clarkson. He is on the front page of The Sun today.
Yes.
I picked him before we saw the stories. He effectively is saying that, you know, despite the fact that he has had huge amounts of difficulties in his health, he's saying, why shouldn't he enjoy himself? Why shouldn't he go to the pub? Why shouldn't he be allowed to do all of the wonderful things that he does? And he's very, very pro-business.
Well, he just might not live as long, but yeah, he can do what he likes. Alex Armstrong?
Well, I'm going to surprise the audience tonight. I'm actually picking Yvette Cooper. Of all the people, I know, right? But I'm doing this because she has put forward the first proposal to put forward protecting the identity of firearms officers, such as Martin Blake, who has now got a bounty on his head for £10,000. So I think this is really important. We should praise the one good thing that Labour have done for the last 100 and something days.
Yeah, OK. Arguably should have happened already with Martin Blake, but there we go. Alex Cairns?
So my is Chris Hoy. This week, he unfortunately got diagnosed with prostate cancer. Yeah. He's got 2 to 4 years to live. Sadly, he did a video about it. But the positive here is he really talked about how he wants to really show how important it is to, get checked. There's 15,000 people on that day that he did the video that went onto the NHS website. So, I think he's doing a really good thing.
Yeah, I saw his video earlier, and when you've been dealt such a blow like that, you've been told you've got a few years left to live. His positivity, I could feel it watching it. He was still optimistic, still wanted to do some good in the world. I think he's writing a book. He wants to help other people, other men who are going to be affected by prostate cancer. So, it's got to be Sir Chris Hoy. Well done, Sir Chris. Yep. Thoughts are with you as well and your family. Reem, your Union Jackass, please. Steve
Reid, who is the DEFRA Minister, who has now decided that they want to ban all disposable vapes. I think it's terrible, I think it's disgraceful, and it's liberal.
Yeah, Alex. Mine is the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, because despite being the Labour Party leader, he can't even define what a working class person is.
Alex Cairns.
Mine is Nigel Farage. He's decided that he now wants to, because he can't get any good councillors himself, he's going to poach them all from the Tory party, and he's got the cheek to complain about the Labour Party going over to the US to get involved in the US election. Right. This is all he spends his time doing.
OK, it's going to be Sir Keir Starmer. I can't believe he's been so flimsy with his language. That's it for tonight. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to the viewers at home, and well done to Patrick. It's a really, it's been an epic show. It's been heartwarming to see the human stories behind the headlines. Simon Evans is next with Headliners. Simon, what have you got in store for us?
Hello, Wes. We'll be taking a look through all the newspapers over the next hour. I mean, a couple of high-quality comedians. Unaccountably, Patrick's high-altitude skinny dipping has not made the front pages tomorrow, although I've no doubt the Sundays will be covering it in some detail, hopefully not his demise. A lot of them, of course, are focusing on Rachel Reeves and her blundering into taxing the middle classes and so on their share portfolios. We'll be looking at the Met struggles with firearms officers and so on.
Simon, sounds like a great show. Thank you very much, everybody at home, for tuning in this evening. Patrick's back on Monday. I hope you have a really, really good weekend. Here's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, 3 areas of weather tomorrow. A fine day for many, but there will be some wet weather in the far northwest and quite grey and a little damp in the far southeast. The bigger picture shows an area of low pressure down to the southwest. That is just edging away. This weather front is moving north, bringing some damp conditions through this evening across central and southern Scotland, clearing away from northeast England. At the same time, overnight, some patchy rain just trickling up from France towards Kent and maybe even into the London area. But most places dry and clear through the nights. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but generally pretty mild for the end of October. Into tomorrow, and as I said, for many of us, it's a fine day, but there will be a weather front bringing cloud and rain into the Outer Hebrides and across the Northern Isles, and that will only slowly track its way southwards across parts of the mainland down towards the Highlands. But for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's a dry start to the weekend. Could be some fog around, and further south, maybe a little misty in places. Certainly a grey start for East Anglia in the southeast. A little bit of rain and drizzle likely here. Staying quite damp, actually, across parts of the southeast for most of the day. Quite windy in the far southwest, but not as windy as today. But for the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall, still a noticeable breeze. Could be the odd shower, but much of southwest England, Wales, northern England, eastern Scotland, dry and fine. That weather front will bring cloud and rain to the west coast of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland by the afternoon. But in the sunny spells, feeling pretty pleasant, 15 or 16 degrees Celsius.